Well, like to welcome all our listeners, Austin, today to our 2024 wrap up. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this for 12 months, and this is going to be the 50th podcast of the year. I know both you and I are chuckling because it would seem like it was yesterday we were sitting there last Christmas, and for those that don't know or haven't heard us talk about it, we usually talk to each other every day when you would be driving home from work. And those conversations have been special, I know, in my life as your dad, and I treasure this relationship. And yet last Christmas, your brother and two sisters had the wild suggestion of starting a podcast. And I know I originally thought, a podcast? I'm not good with technology at all. And I think if I remember correctly, you said, I don't want to be talking in publicly to everybody. And yet here we are. And it's a work of God. And it's been just an unbelievable opportunity for us to grow together and individually. And what were some of your thoughts when you heard we're going to do a podcast?
Well, I'm actually zooming out and thinking through the whole year. I mean, for me, it's gone full circle. Like you talked about that conversation we had with our siblings, or my siblings, your kids. Uh, it's just been amazing to see how it's gone full circle. Like I said, we were sitting here last Christmas and talking about a podcast, and here we are now, doing our 50th one. Just how much we've grown, and how many cool stories and things that have happened over the year has been just truly amazing.
You mentioned the word story, which I want to get to in a minute, but I don't want to assume this might be the first podcast one of our listeners hears. So if you're wondering who we are, I wanted just to share with you that the name of our ministry is Win Awakening. And our hearts are to awaken hearts and minds one story at a time. The name of our podcast is Awaken Kingdom Culture. And you can find us on Spotify and YouTube right now. We're going to continue to grow that. But back to the word story, I've always thought that a person's story was important. You've heard me talk many times about the person in front of you is the most important person of your day. And that has been something I know personally I have really grown in over the last 12 to 15 years. And to be able to share in someone's story like we have over the last year, it just has really shown me that there's a couple things that I think hold true, Austin, for everybody. Number one, everybody has a story, and everybody wants to tell their story. It's finding those environments where we welcome people in to be able to be transparent and vulnerable and to share the highs and lows of their story and how they've navigated it with their faith. And it might be a little faith, or they might have a lot of faith at the time we talk to them. Some of the people have tragedies they're working through. So that has been just, it has held so true to what I thought always was the case, but to be able to live it out over this past year has just been so special, and to be able to do it with you as well. What do you think?
Well, for me, it's just an honor. I know for me, it's been very special to spend time with you, Dad. And I'm not, obviously the time we literally get to spend together now is awesome, but I think what we're creating, like we said in the first podcast, for my kids, or anyone who listens, this is something that you can archive and go back and just kind of track your growth. And I know for me, some of the conversations we've had have been really thought provoking, and God has used and to challenge my own thinking and help me see Him in a better way. I've also just been real encouraged by each opportunity we've had to do these stories with each and every person that has been on the podcast. It's amazing what you pull out, and little nuggets of gold that you find, and the conversations we have on air and off air. I mean, it's something that I'm going to cherish. And like, the truth is, you're not going to live forever. So just the opportunity to um, share this time has been an absolute blessing.
Yeah, I am getting some gray hair. I've noticed that, and the body's breaking down. But hopefully, I have another 25 or 30 at least with you. And no, we talked a couple of weeks ago about who really, who's blessed by the story. And I said, if nobody else listens to these podcasts, I know 3 people that are.
Yeah.
The person sharing their story.
Yeah.
And me and you.
Yeah.
Because like you said, even off the air, some of the conversations we've gotten into, I'm so grateful that we've had that opportunity, and hopefully we'll have it for many more years. And what God's going to do with this podcast will be only in his hands. And that's where we want to trust it. Well, before we get started talking about, different people and some of the things that has spoken to our hearts, I just wanted to rattle off for our listeners that the various types of people that God's brought to us. What's amazed me is no one has ever said no. Everybody we've asked, and we got a long list into next year. We had one person that got sick right before it, and we had to postpone it. We're going to do them in 25. But for the most part, they were all excited about it. Coach, as long as we can work through schedules. And so it's been great. But, here's just a quick list I'm going to bang off for you of the types of individuals that we've been blessed with. We started with our own personal story. We shared ours. We talked about mom.
Yeah.
We know the story of mom, and we'll get to that maybe in a minute. We've had mentors and bosses in my life, former staff and players that we've had the chance to talk to. We did a family story, a father and a mother and their 4 kids. We've done a husband-wife team in this profession. We've done father-son teams, daughter-father teams. We've done pastors and businessmen that we have known in our life. We've done long time and new relationships. Some people we've met for the first time on a podcast because they were recommended to us. We've dealt with champions, people that are national champions in college football, some in baseball. We've dealt with Super Bowl champions, high school champions. So that whole theme of being a champion. We've dealt with Hall of Fame coaches, believe it or not. Who would have ever thought? We had Grammy Award winner. Me and you with a Grammy Award winner. I can't figure that one. And then we've dealt with the people that have been fired and forgotten, which that's been part of my career and my life that we've experienced. We've had high school and college players and coaches. We've had people that played in the NFL, NFL Europe, which is dear to you and I. We've had guys that have played in the NCAA at all the different college levels, XFL, CFL, you name it. We've covered it. We've had football, baseball, hockey. We've already said music. We've had authors, numerous people that have written books. We've talked about great recruiters in this profession. And we've had ages range from 18, they're going to think I'm exaggerating, to 94.
Wow.
What do you think when you hear that list rattled off, Austin?
Once again, the experience. That's the beauty of story, is we all have different experiences, and we all have different perspectives because of the experiences we go through or walk through. It's just that's why it's such a blessing, is to be able to get all those different perspectives and just get to see what's going on in their heart and mind, where they're at today, regardless of what they've achieved or haven't achieved, or if it's a good season, bad season. It's just it's an honor.
What I think about when you talked about the perspective, I thought of wisdom. And I think, here's Papa using a story of an 18-year-old and a story of a 94-year-old. And he's selectively using that story in someone's life that we don't even know.
Right.
I think of one incident this year that really spoke to me. We had a former coach of mine and now a friend, we'll talk about him a little bit later, share his story. And I'm also friends with someone in a town nearby here, and I'm having lunch one day, and these two individuals have nothing in common. And the guy I'm having lunch with said, that podcast with so-and-so really spoke to my heart.
Mm.
And so we just don't know how God is weaving, as you mentioned earlier, that tapestry of life, which we have experienced, because every one of these people has somehow been tied to our life.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the other day, which would be good to share with our listeners, about all our moving around. And what did you say about that?
Yeah. It's just, as you step back and you look, and I think doing this podcast has made it really clear to me, is there's a purpose for everything and everywhere that we go. And me, who living in 11 different states and going to all these different schools and going over to Europe and being a coach, being a player, all these different teams, that's a lot of people you run across, a lot of lives, and they're starting to come back. And it's just it's amazing to see that God had this in mind, not just when awakening or awaken kingdom culture, but he had these relationships in mind from the beginning. And it's been an honor to start to see Papa's tapestry.
Some of the things that our ministry offers, just again, there might be a first-time listener, but we take weekly calls. I call them Conversations with Coach K, and obviously Austin's going to grow more into that as well. But I have weekly, monthly, bi-monthly conversations with either individuals or groups. And we just try to walk alongside people in this profession, this performance-based industry. How do you live from, we call it a place of victory? How do you live from your true identity? And then we also have a bi-monthly coaches group, which you're more than welcome to be a part of. If you have interest in that, just reach out to me at Ken Karcher at winawakening.com, or you can go to our website, which is winawakening.org. And you'll find the information I think you need there. But those are some of the things we offer. We're getting ready to kick off, which talk a little bit more at the end. We'll kick off our first retreat coming up here next year, 2025 in March. So, but with that said, Austin, let's talk a little bit about just, our story. We started out with you and I, our family story. We have some questions that we love to ask in our ministry. What are some things that, as you recap the year, now looking back, that you'd want to share with some of our listeners in a recap?
Well, first, anytime you approach your own story, I think it allows you to see the connection in what God's doing, because you have to start looking at the themes and maybe some of the trauma you worked through, or some of the circumstances. So as you begin to look at your own story, you start to see maybe why the way you think, or what are the things you really do believe, and why do you believe those? So for me, it was really good just doing that first podcast where we were going through, and I was able just to step back and really look at that parable of building your house or your identity on either the sand or the rock. So for me, that time with Papa, just thinking through how would I tell my story, he's revealed that is a lot of what I've had to walk through and go through as I've gone through this journey. So to me, starting with the story, it was just a great opportunity to sit and think about, what has God been doing? And because once again, when you recognize what he's been doing, you're able to have a better perspective that, some things that work here, so our conversation just going through. The other thing, Dad, about telling our story is just, vulnerability produces vulnerability in other people. We just I finished watching a show on Netflix that was talking about how part of being a man, a lot of times, at least the thought process is you hide everything. You're not vulnerable. You don't share what you believe or what you're thinking through or all that stuff. And so looking back and just going through our story or listening to other people's stories, when one person takes that leap of faith to share what's in their heart or what they're thinking through, and just know it's a safe environment, that you're not going to be judged for what you say. It gives the freedom to be known. And for me, that is what all human beings want. Everybody wants to be known, but they're afraid to be known and not accepted. And the beautiful message that we get to share is that our Father wants to accept you. You just got to let him. And because he knows you and still chooses to accept you. You just have to let him.
There's so many things that go through my mind as you're talking, and one is I think of back to, when Mom used to say to me many times leaving the house, she would remind me that, you want to be a coach. Many, many people want to be coached nowadays. And she always reminded me, she said, don't ever forget that coaching is a high calling. And, when you're a coach, what you really do is you're entering into people's stories, because you get all these players, all these coaches that come from different walks of life. And it's this unique opportunity created in a locker room, in a team meeting room, where you bring all these people together for one cause, one goal. And, so often you think that goal is just to go win a championship, but it's really about building family. It's building lives. It's helping people work through these things in their life that they've grown up with or they're carrying. And so, the same thing, like you said, to have the chance to share our story is really what birthed this ministry, right? I mean, it's wanting to give people that opportunity to be transparent and vulnerable. I go back to the garden when you talk about transparency and vulnerability. What's the question that Papa asked Adam and Eve? Why are you hiding?
Yeah.
Quit hiding.
Where are you?
Yeah, where are you? Quit hiding.
Yep.
And so that's what we hopefully will create, environments for people that come into the ministry and want to be a part of it, that they'll feel safe enough, to say, here's where I'm at. And, we have a question that we like to ask in this ministry, or that I've asked for many, many years as coaches come into my office or players. And that's the question of, how are you? And a lot of times you get a flippant answer, I'm good, fine. And if I sense that, I often say, well, now that you're done lying, how you really doing? How are you? Because a lot of times, again, we're not asked that question seriously, because, again, if they give you an answer of not well, you're now involved.
Yeah.
So 2 questions: how are you? And then another one that was just brought into our life a year ago through a friend that now I meet with weekly: who's taking care of you? So as we walk through these stories today of all these different people from different walks of life, I want to encourage our listeners to think about those 2 questions. How are you? Sitting right now on your couch, or sitting in your office as a coach, or getting prepared for something in recruiting. Or maybe you're just coming out of your house and you and your wife have had a little bit of an argument, or your kids are yelling and screaming. We all have these issues. How are you? And then who's taking care of you? We want to offer you the opportunity that we're willing to walk with you. We don't have all your answers for you. If we did, we'd do them all for ourselves too. But we are here for you.
Yeah. We've had interesting conversations along the way too. I like to laugh. People who were behind the scenes know this, but when we first started talking last December about our podcast, we said, I think I think we can get a good 15 minutes in a podcast. And sitting here today, we have some podcasts that are just, a little under 2 hours, which that's not our aim. It's just at the end of the day, especially when we're dealing with people's stories, is we want to open it up for you to share your heart. And what we find is people are either excited about it, or, they're in tune to what they're saying. So we're not about cutting off what's going on in their heart and mind. So it's been really cool. Just that regard is just, someone who doesn't like to, do a whole bunch of public speaking or anything like that is able to sit here and have conversations with people, in a potential public setting for a long period of time. But as we sat and we began to talk, we're sitting and saying, what are we going to talk about? We started thinking about what are some things that we've talked about in my car ride home, or your car rides home. And it's been interesting that God started with, you know, uh, what does it mean to be a kingdom coach? What does it look like? Now, just to reference, we're not trying to create, some type of cult or, some type of label for what a kingdom coach is. I mean, the reality is we're in a process of learning how to live this thing out ourselves.
Mhm.
But there are fruits that are consistent in what a kingdom coach does, you know, and really what it is, it's a coach who is experiencing the kingdom, and the
Amen.
kingdom just transforms that coach in his everyday life, and we had a bunch of different points on that. You want to take them through some of the things we've talked about a kingdom coach?
Well, I think that we've talked about this, you and I, for geez, who knows, the last 15 years. It's all about identity.
Mm.
Our willingness to accept that we're accepted,
Yeah.
and to live out of who Papa says we are.
Yeah.
We live in an industry where the scoreboard dictates, the record dictates, who we are in so many ways. And once again, we understand how the profession works. I've done it for 35 years. You're now, I think, on your 15th. So it's not like we're naive. I understand you want to win. It's much more fun to win. We're going to try to win. But winning occurs all the time. And winning is not an event on a certain night or day. Winning is a lifestyle, living from a place of victory. So we talked about the first thing a coach that wants to live from the kingdom comes to understand is, well, what is my true identity? Right. So we talk a lot about identity and how to live from it. Then we started talking about, what does it mean to be a transformational coach versus a transactional coach? We've experienced both.
Yeah.
We've probably done both in our lives.
Yep.
It's very easy to be transactional. You do this for me, Austin, I'll do that for you. Well, that's not how Papa works. He's into transforming people through relationship. And so we talk a lot about transformational coaching, transformational leadership. What's that look like when it's, 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon? How does that express itself? Or after losing a big game or winning a big game, those transformational relationships. And there's a lot of information out there that is very good to consider. We talk about trying to cause people to think, rethinking some maybe things that they've been told in the past. And then you talked about, how do we do this from the heart? Why don't you share those couple things?
Yeah, so you talked about transformational. I mean, it starts with our own thinking, right? In the Bible, it talks about the renewing of our mind, basically taking the way we think and aligning it to the way he thinks and the way he sees. And I think that's where, it takes us to the next step, which is understanding a person's heart. Well, how do you do that? I think it starts with what you see. What do you see when you see people? Well, I think what we would say a kingdom coach, as we're learning, is someone who sees past just their straight performance and sees the person's heart, who they're
and growth.
Yeah, and they see growth. I also think that they hear different. The truth is, I mean, if you're attuned to any type of conversation, most people don't say what's really going on in their heart. Once again, because they're performing a lot of times, which I get. I do it all the time too. But someone who is who is living out this picture of what a kingdom coach is someone who can look past that facade, that mask, and see what's going on in that person's heart, whether through what they hear or through what they see. And then we talked about not just understanding a person's heart as a kingdom coach, but then reviving it. I like the word revive. It's to bring someone back, to bring them back to life, and so a kingdom coach, I think in John, it talks about, it says in the first, maybe the fourth verse, something along the lines of basically, Jesus is the life. He is the light, which is the life of all men. Well, we have an opportunity to bring that life and basically, allow God to revive or bring back what they already have. And I think what we've talked about is how do we do that as a coach? through our speaking, and even sometimes just our touch,
Mm.
just our physical touch. And I think these are all things that we started off talking about, and it's been interesting, is because we started off with probably 4 or 5 when we started
Mhm.
the thought of a kingdom coach, and Papa just brought, hey, what about hearing? What about touching?
Mm.
And then finally, we ended with this beautiful one of presence. You want to talk a little bit about presence?
Yeah, well, again, I think of even our ministry. One day I was thinking about it, and he said, Ken, this is what I want When Awakening to be. I want it to be a ministry of presence. They know you'll be there when you need them.
Mm,
And that's really the way it works for all of us, unfortunately. Either we're hard headed or caught up into our life that we don't think we need Papa till we really need Papa.
yeah.
And he wants us to know he's there all the time. He's present all the time. I want to go back to one you said, though, talk about speaking life. We either speak life or we steal life. Words matter. That's another one that really Papa has just ingrained in my heart. He said, Ken, the words that leave your mouth matter. You're either breathing life or you're stealing life from somebody. And so, that's a real challenge and encouragement for coaches, because it's so often we've been taught, we got to coach them hard, got to coach them hard. Well, yeah, coaching them hard and knowing what to do and being detailed and all those things are very important, but tearing life from somebody, that's not going to do anything. So, our words matter as coaches. We need to do that as parents, with our children. And that's something that's very important. We went then from talking about, coaching out of the kingdom, and we started to talk about how do we approach other people as a coach. We called it the coach approach. We took it out of Luke 8, the parable of the 4 soils, the parable of the sower. And that was interesting, because we're all going to run into all types of individuals at periods of their life, including ourselves. Some will be in what is called the hard soil or the hardened heart at the time. Some people are walking through that shallow part of their life where they're maybe an inch deep in what they know in their faith, and then boom, something rocks them. And then there's where probably most of us go in and out at times. We get caught up in the cares of this world, paying bills, raising children, car breaks down, health issues. And it just chokes out the life that we have in us. Again, it's not something we got to put this, it's in us. That's the beauty of the good news. He is in us. And then you might want to talk about, I listened to one of my friends, sort of spurred this thought process, encouragement on us. But the 4th soil, different approach.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that a little
Which
bit.
is the good soil. But I mean, it's once again, as I look through this year, what's cool is the process or the journey. And I think that's the beautiful things about what coaches do, is coaches have the ability to step into a bunch of people's processes and have the ability to, ride the waves or the roller coaster with each individual person. And that's what creates relationship. And that relationship is what ultimately changes lives, I believe. So as we rode this roller coaster of the coach approach, or this journey of the process, at least my first perspective was, and there's nothing wrong with the first perspective, but it was just, the first perspective was solely on, these are individual hearts. This person has a hard heart. This person has a shallow soil, or this person, and basically we're labeling where they are. But it was almost like that's who they are, is almost my initial approach. But as we went through, God kind of put on my heart is, these are seasons that each person goes through. These are moments that each person goes through in their heart. And it's not that anyone is at a spot where they're just saying, I'm good soil. I've created good soil now I can accept the seed that God is planting. It's I'm approaching with a hard heart. I got a shallow heart because of my thinking, or I got, I'm so busy and so worried and distracted that, that's what's coming. That's what we have. But the beautiful thing, and this is what you were alluding to, as God took us through this journey is it's really about the sower
Mm-hmm.
and about his seed that he sows. The sower is persistent. He knows all things, so he knows the hearts that he's about to throw his seed on. But in the story, he throws it on all the soils.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the sower or the farmer, however you want to think about it, gets dirty, and he does whatever he needs in each of those soils to produce what is good soil, to help people see the beautiful seed that he is providing for them, because the seed is greater than whatever quote unquote heart you have.
And the seed obviously is love.
Yeah.
His love never ends.
Mm.
It talks about in Romans, there's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. And so to me, I got that picture in my head of the sower just continuing to sow his love, sow his love, sow his love. And there is no but, or what about, there isn't any of that with the people he's dealing with. He's willing to enter the mess or the beauty of where you are in your life, and he is going to love. It says God is love in 1 John, right?
Yeah.
And he says, where is God? Well, God is in us.
Yeah.
And, he has called us to be his beloved children of God now. And so that love through that whole parable just jumped out after we listened. My friend Jason Clark did a great little teaching on it. And it really generated in my heart to look at that deeper too. And just amazing. So it's been a heck of a journey. You and I, just us two talking without even going to the guests.
Yep.
We've had some kind people say they like that.
Yep.
And we're going to entertain some interesting topics in the new year of 25. We're going to talk about winning. What does it mean to win? There's a lot of discussion about that. But
what does success look like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because these are all things that as coaches, these are realities. And once again, here's what I've learned and am continuing to learn. We're not going to change the circumstances surrounding. The world is never going to stop thinking the scoreboard is the most important thing.
Mm.
But it's not about changing those things to then experience peace, to then experience rest. It's about learning or tapping into or abiding in the source that we have to be able to stand in whatever the scoreboard says.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the beautiful truth. Like you said, coaching is a high calling. If we learn how to manifest or experience Papa, and as the kingdom changes us, overflows through us in our coaching, those fruits that we talked about as a kingdom coach show up, and we approach all these different hearts.
You said something way back when. You just made me think about it again. God worked through what? Prophets.
Yep.
He worked through kings.
Yep.
He worked through priests,
judges,
his disciples, the ordinary, the extraordinary, you name it.
Yep.
And you asked this question one time in our conversation. You said, Dad, why couldn't he work through coaches?
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, the opportunity is there, and it's there for so many professions or so many people. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, are we attentive? Are we seeing what he is doing? Are we open to listening and correction? Do we have a teachable heart, like you've said many a times? Because just imagine you and I really start to live this quote unquote kingdom lifestyle out as we experience it, and we take it into our world of coaching. Well, each year we're in front of 100 kids possibly on a day-to-day basis who are then going to have jobs, who are then going to have families, who are then going to have kids, or they're going to be married, and then they're going to have kids, who are going to help foster and grow thinking within their own households, which then go and change culture or the world that we live in. I mean, the opportunity, like I think Jesus says that, the field is plentiful, but the workers are few.
Mm.
If we as coaches can get our minds focused on, hey, I can go coach to the best of my abilities, give our team the best opportunity to win on the scoreboard,
Mhm.
but not lose focus on the eternal victory and the eternal, life that we can continue to pass on to other people, which is His love.
And eternal life is now. It's
Yeah.
not wait until we die and go to heaven. It made me think about, and then we're going to give them a snapshot of all these people here, but, just the thought that the most important person, again, is the one in front of you. I was talking to a couple coaches the other day that have been let go the last 3 weeks. And I said, looking back, one of the things, and this is difficult, it's got to be spirit driven. I said, one of the things looking back that I missed, I said, in the midst of our pain and sadness and every other emotion of being fired, I miss so many of those moments from that day of being fired till today, whether it be people in front of me or working through things in my own life or things in our family. And, it wasn't, I guess, anyone's fault. I was oblivious to it. So I've been asking coaches, I said, I'm going to encourage you as you walk through these tough time, not making light of it at all, but maybe you jot down something you see Papa doing, some Papa saying, or someone in front of you. You've heard me say this. I've shared this with numerous people. My good friend Craig Snyder, who's on our board, challenged me probably last summer sometime. He said, let me just encourage you. He said, don't get caught up with numbers, whether it be scoreboard numbers, financial numbers, people on your Facebook saying they like you or shares. Or he said, if I can encourage you with one thing, he said, if all you are about is you walking with one person for a whole year, that's the only person you build into, they build into you. And then with one commitment at the end of the year, be willing to do it with someone new for the next year. So one day I was just jotting down on a piece of paper. I said, my dad died at 86, Austin. I thought, I'm 61. If Papa gives me 25 more, what would that look like? And as I mapped it out, 1 + 1 is 2 and 2 + 2 is 4 and on and on and on for 25 years, it came a little over 32 million people. So I encourage our listeners, just like it's you and I, if nothing else comes out of the ministry and you and I grow as a father-son in our relationship, that's worth it.
Yes.
So, well, before we go to our people, our guests, I do want to give a little commercial. As you can see, Austin and I are in our newly designed polos. I'm in the white one, as you can see, and Austin's in our black model. I got to brag on Austin. He put this together. There's our Win Awakening logo. We even have hats. He and I do. But, if you're looking at or watching this podcast, and you say, man, that's a sharp shirt, give us a call. We'll be happy to get you a Win Awakening polo shirt or hat to wear around proudly. So that's my little commercial. So now let's get into our guests, and we're going to give you a rapid fire, follow up from 24. And there's no one better to start it off with. My dear mentor and friend. When Austin and I started the podcast, I said, Austin, when I was talking to the Lord, and I said, Papa, who would be the best person to start this off with? And he says, start with the Lord. Yep, that's Bob Lord. Bob is 94 years old. He's been a mentor of mine. I've worked for Bob. He's worked for me. We've worked together as assistants. But here's one thing, Bob Lord, I'll never forget, Austin, in my life. Bob Lord was my encourager. Mm. It didn't matter what anyone said. Sometimes it was embarrassing. He even did it on the podcast, but he was a Ken Karcher fan. He believed in me, and that spoke to my heart for so many years. And I love Bob dearly. I know he's your coach too.
Yeah. Coach Lord, I love you. And, it's a blessing to have him in my life. As I was reminiscing the role he played in my life, I was reminded of first time I met him. I was a little kid over in Europe, eating some ice cream with Coach Lord, who was Euro line coach at that time. And little did I know, once again, back to God's work, that he would be my high school coach over in Georgia and just play the role that he played in my life. And then we moved further along, and here we are in our first podcast, getting to honor him and his story.
He's our 94-year-old coach.
Yes.
I think we went, to another Liberty guy, right?
Yep. Next up was Sam Congatto, who played for you and ended up...
Dr. Sam Congatto.
Yes, Dr. Sam Congatto. I'm sorry. And he had the opportunity to play in the NFL, played a little bit with the Texans and the Green Bay Packers, and a little bit with the Rams as well. But I always look at him as my brother in a lot of ways, and my older brother has just meant so much to me, and was able to see you, because sometimes as you're being coached, it's easy just to see the struggles or the hard things, but he was able to see who you are. And the thing that really jumps out to me though is, he was born in Nigeria and came to America, and he just he still has that heart for Nigeria and the people over there, and has used his gifts and his talents that he's learned and built over the years, and has a heart to love those people.
Yeah, you mentioned the word 3 or 4 times. He just has a wonderful heart, sweet spirit, like a child, another son of mine. Like you said, he's a doctor here in Lynchburg, and ear, nose, and throat doctor, and has a ministry, Jonah's Inheritance, over in Nigeria. And I think wants to go back there someday, he and his sister and family. And so he was special. Then we followed up with another guy, played for me at Liberty, started as a walk-on, earned a scholarship, but his story was so inspirational. Battles being blind, and just to hear how, he started working in Wall Street down in Manhattan, and he's gone all over the place, very successful in business, great family, but just the inspiration that Matt Sherwood really, I can't say enough how it spoke to my heart listening to him tell his story. And, just even to this day, he's part of our ministry, and I really love Matt, and I'm just glad he's back in my life.
Yeah. For me, just sitting there, getting an opportunity to see his story, it made me think, and obviously the challenges that he has to overcome are amazing, and he's done an unbelievable job of overcoming some of those challenges. But learning how to trust like he's had to trust and walk by faith without being able to see, I think, he has an understanding of the Father better than a lot of us do because of that challenge that he's had to work through.
Perfect picture of the difference between perspective and perception.
Yeah.
So who'd we jump to then? Again, not that we got to do these all in order, but
I think we did the Team Rick, right?
Oh, Team Rick. You mean Mark Rick?
Yes.
Mark Rick came on Awaken Kingdom Culture?
Yep.
Wow. Who would have thought that?
Yep. And
thank you, Mark.
Yes.
And John.
Yes. And John, his oldest son, who I had an opportunity to play against in high school when, we moved down to Georgia. And it's, once again, how God crosses paths. It was our first team that we got to go through. And for me, it's just, I think what spoke to me in that conversation was just the friendship between the father and the son, and just how much, obviously he loves all his kids, and he's had a great career, but just the way he spoke of his son and what he's doing, and how coaching has poured down into his son and what he's doing now. And it's just a beautiful story of a father and a son, and the friendship that they have, and I think they live close together.
They do. I know Mark's struggling with some, it's been well documented, some illnesses in his later part of his career here, but he's always been a peer coach of mine that, I look to as someone that was very successful, but obviously loved the Lord. And so that was our first team, and that was great. We appreciate them being on there. And then we talked to Kerry Joseph. Kerry Joseph is a former Rhine Fire player.
Yeah.
19 years he's played professional football, a lot of it in the CFL, NFL Europe, and NFL. Now he's a coach. I hate to say it, when we interviewed him, he was just getting started with the season, and we were high hopes. They were getting the number 1 draft pick. He's with the Chicago Bears. They're having a tough year, but I know his spirit's got a sweet spirit. We talked about journaling. He's really big into journaling and how that's helped him in his career. So we thank Kerry Joseph, and we hope things work out with the Bears, Kerry.
Yep. And we had the opportunity to talk to Tony Dungy. Um, what I mean. Tony Dungy obviously is well known. Wrote great books. Won Super Bowls and a coach in the Hall of Fame. I just look at him and am so honored to have an opportunity to share an hour and a half, just getting to hear his story. It's interesting just hearing how the role of a coach.
Mm.
I think it was one of his younger coaches, but his middle school principal who kept him in football. He was thinking about quitting, and I think it was a senior year or whatever, and just was encouraged to keep working through. And that perseverance brought him into college, got him in the NFL, and eventually coaching. And obviously he's well known. I mean, some of the things I took away, some quotes or little nuggets that I took from him were, pressure is what you feel when you don't know what you do.
Mm.
And then he said there's two ways to coach. There's encouragement or intimidation. And then the third thing was, my way or the highway. We don't want half of our team on the highway.
That was Chuck Noll said that to him.
Yep. And just figure out a way to reach each individual. And it's just that one, having that hope for everyone. And then two is like understanding that people come from different stories and different backgrounds, and learning how to communicate and love and draw out the best in a bunch of individuals. And that's how you create a team.
When I think of Dungy, I think, man, talking Tapestry, we crossed paths in 1990 when I was a player. He was the DB coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. We became friends. He and Lauren and Pauline and I went to a conference we were at together for PAO, and he's been a faithful friend. I know a lot of people respect Tony, and I have the greatest respect for him as well. We also had one of my former coaches, great player at the University of Miami. Pauline mom always was scared of Bernard Clark Jr., which we'll talk about in a second. Bernard's got that big raspy voice. He looks like a middle linebacker from the Hurricanes, and yet he's a gentle giant, great spirit. Just love the guy. He's now a head coach up in Pittsburgh at Robert Morris. And we had a great time talking to him. But what jumped out to me was his relationship with his dad. He's since lost his dad. He emphasized, Ken, it's Bernard Clark Jr.
Yeah.
He wanted to make sure that his dad, he could carry on his dad's name and legacy. And he just said, a couple things his dad said to him. He said, stop trying to prove yourself. This was at a big, I think, national championship game or bowl game. The dad said, quit trying to prove yourself. Just be yourself and relax and enjoy yourself. And then Bernard's also an author. He wrote the book Better Men, Better Husbands, or Better Fathers. So if you're looking for a good book, check out Bernard's book. So we had Bernard Clark. Who else do you got?
Coming off of Tony Dungy, we went with Dick Vermeil in the summertime. And how humbling. I mean, once again, they're two of the top coaches in our profession, two Hall of Fame coaches. And both of them focused on teaching. I thought that was something really really important for especially us as young coaches. What our role is to be great teachers. And some of the nuggets I took away from him. I mean, his podcast was full of so much wisdom, and there's so many little pictures of what a kingdom coach looks like. I mean, just his love for people and seeing people. I think later we talked to another coach who talks about one of the best people at doing this was Dick Vermeil, and just the ability to draw out and see value in people.
You talked about in Tony's story of the power of a coach or the role of a coach. Remember Dick Vermeil? Dick Vermeil's planning on being a mechanic at his dad's shop.
Yes.
And a coach says, I think you can play college football. Next thing you know, he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yep.
No more changing carburetors or tires. He's a Hall of Fame coach. So
here's some nuggets that I took away. It said, you can't make a champion out of someone you always call a chump.
Wow.
We talk about what we speak, right? A kingdom coach is speaking greatness or speaking life into an individual. If you're calling someone negative things, how do you expect them to go be who they were created to
Mm.
be, with great value and purpose in whatever role Papa has for them? He said, as a head coach, your role is to put players in the meeting room to be in the frame of mind to be coached.
Mm.
You know, uh, and I've never been a head coach. I know you have, and the challenge a lot of times is you got all this other things, but I mean, you're dealing with people, and you have coaches who have roles of coaching and a great leader, a great head coach is someone who gets their hearts or their minds ready to be coachable, and so that when they do get in front of their coaches, they can soak in what is being said.
I think that's a great example of someone that's humble and is a great delegator because, and I know I've struggled with it in my past too, is, as a head coach, you think, well, I'm going to call the offense, or I'm going to call the defense. But to recognize your role is get the players in a position that they're willing to be coached.
Yeah,
That's huge.
absolutely.
That's huge.
He said, be who you are and allow who you aren't to be improved by those you respect and admire.
Mm.
I mean, we're getting some nuggets about like names like Bill Walsh and like, I'm just smiling because I love the history of football and all that stuff. And some of these great coaches that have crossed paths, and he's telling us about how this guy influenced me and this guy played a role in. And I was just amazed in that podcast how he was able to see the people he worked for and to glean and communicate what they were able to impact in his life. And I think it goes back to that statement.
And it's what we forget about Austin as we've jumped to this next guy. Did you have one more you wanted to share?
Yeah, obviously this is one that everyone always says, but never be embarrassed to say I love you. That he's well known for saying I love you to his players and his coaches.
And being vulnerable and emotional.
Yeah, vulnerable and emotional. And I think that's what brings connection. And I think what has made him such a great coach is his ability to connect with people through his vulnerability and his ability to communicate things that most people, aren't comfortable saying.
And what, as I was saying, is really interesting in this journey as well, is we have people recommend people. Because a lot of times at the end, we'll say, hey, do you have anyone else you want us to talk to? And many of these people are the ones that led us to others. And the next guy is DJ Dinkins.
Yeah.
Bernard Clark says, hey, you need to talk to DJ Dinkins. I said, DJ Dinkins, the guy I recruited at the University of Pittsburgh. And so we were able to talk to DJ, and man, what a story. And that guy is so rich.
Oh.
The things that came out of his mouth, I mean, you could take a month to meditate on. He just had so many things. He talked about being water. He talked about feelings have no intellect. I thought this was a great statement. Feelings have no intellect until you tell them where to go.
Mm.
And I thought, wow, that's rich. And then he also is an author. He's an author of a book called Focus, which I would highly recommend if you get a chance to look that as well. It's DJ Dinkins, the author of Focus. Played at Pitt as a quarterback, ended up playing in the NFL, winning the Super Bowl ring with the New Orleans Saints as a tight end.
Yep.
Big man with a great heart.
Yes.
Love DJ Dinkins. Yes. How about you?
Then, we go to another guy who's been a head coach in the NFL, but is a great friend of yours, has coached a lot of years in the NFL as a receiver coach, and Al Saunders.
Oh, his was good.
Oh, yeah, so good. He has an interesting story how he even got to America. He's originally from England, and he came over and just how people, stepped into a situation in their life and because originally they couldn't get in the country, but there were people in his story that helped him get it over into America, and then eventually the rest is history.
Through Canada.
Yeah, through Canada. He was a great swimmer, which we found out. Yeah. Obviously he had name after name that he worked for or been a part of, and just the wisdom. But both him and Coach Vermeil, who obviously work together, just the way they speak about people they've worked with and the role that they played in their lives, it's just it takes a lot of humility to speak about someone else and what they have, and they do such a great job of that. And
you know what really hit me with Al when we
What?
got to the end, and I can't remember today if it was off air or right at the end. I think it was right at the end because we had issues. We did him twice. Remember the first time we did it, we had technical issues, so we had to do it again. I'm thinking he's not going to want to do it again.
I know.
He was so gracious, and it went longer the second time. But what he said was at the end is he thanked us for showing him value. Now here's a guy that in the eyes of the world, he has everything.
And we're like, who are we?
But to be able to give someone that chance to share their story, that gives them value. And, we didn't set out with that intention. But
Another quote I like that he said to Dad was, it was always about immediate feedback. And, there's a difference between telling and teaching. His story about Coach McKay and that lesson. And me as a young coach still going through this profession is, there's a lot of wisdom to that because a lot of times we are focused on the telling as opposed to being a great teacher and getting them to understand what we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, when you think Dungy, Vermeil, and Saunders, that's a hat trick. And while we're talking hat tricks, let's go to our hockey player, Troy Loney, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yes, Troy is a friend that I met back in the late 90s when we were living in Pittsburgh, and he and I went to church together. He's from Canada, obviously being a great hockey player. He's won 2 Stanley Cups.
Yep.
And he and I used to always joke of which sport was tougher. And I say, you got to be crazy to play hockey. So you got blades, you got hockey pucks. And he said, football's much more toughness. You got to be, I'm like, I don't know about that. But I had great respect for Troy. It was great hearing his story. Again, what a wonderful heart. Got a great wife, Atkins. His kids, play hockey as well. But one of the things he said that I couldn't believe is how long his dad played hockey. He said his dad played hockey, not professionally, just hockey in Canada with his buddies, 38 years old. I'm like, 38 years old playing hockey. That was a pretty interesting story. And then just talking about how, in hockey, when you win the Stanley Cup, you get to take the Stanley Cup to your hometown.
Yeah.
Each player gets the Stanley Cup. And he talked about touring the Stanley Cup and how they just flew it to Canada in a little old box, nothing special. He and his dad picked it up at the airport. See, you see all these guys on TV and you see all this, glitz and glamour, but these are just people with stories.
Yep.
And so it was fun going from your hat trick to our Stanley Cup champion. Thanks, Troy, for being on Awaken Kingdom Culture, my friend. Who'd you have next?
Next up, we had Todd Bates. We had him in the summer as well. One of your former assistants and is now a defensive assistant at Oklahoma. And he is has been in Alabama, Clemson. Was an Alabama player, and then he's coached at Clemson and, like we said, Oklahoma. Thing that I took away was just his relationship with his dad and just how he talked about his dad's presence.
Yes.
And sitting outside of the gate as he's practicing, and just some of the timely words of wisdom in moments of decisions where his dad came up and spoke truth and helped him walk through or shepherd him through things in his life. And it was just such a blessing to have Coach Bates out there. So thank you, Coach.
Todd is a former coach. And as we both found out, I knew from when he coached me, a great poet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
He has that ability. He's written some great poetry and has used it at Clemson and Oklahoma and
Alabama, too.
Alabama. He's an Alabama grad. So if you're looking for some great poetry, look up Todd Bates. I think you'll be encouraged. Then we had another dear friend of mine, someone that has really spoken into my life over the last 2 years. We talk a lot, and that's Rob Spence, great offensive coordinator, great coach, just detailed technician. He got labeled this term at Clemson, the mad scientist. But that's not half of who he is. He's a great offensive mind. He's had up and down career. He went through the firing at Clemson just like I've been fired, and he was very transparent and walking us through what he was thinking in his heart. And so I'd say for you coaches that are out there in the big time and maybe you've been let go, maybe you've heard those words, we're going to make a change, or we're going in a different direction, or you might just have heard you're fired. Listen to the Rob Spence podcast because this is a man that loves God, knows he's loved by God, he's got a great family, dear friend, great mind offensively, but he's walked through some tough times too, and his faith has helped him navigate it. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Coach. Then we had Dub Maddox, who we never met personally, but through going to some clinics, you met someone who connected you, and that's this whole tapestry of life we keep referring to.
How about his favorite team and his hero?
Oh, John Elway.
John Elway. He didn't have an idea that I was a third teamer with a couple of coffees at Denver, but we had that connection too.
Yeah, but he spends a lot of time studying the quarterback position, and he's out in Oklahoma, winning a bunch of state championships, but has written a bunch of books. It's funny. I text him this is. I didn't know who he was, but when I was out in Texas coaching, somebody ordered a book. The previous offensive coordinator before me ordered a book, and well, he had already left. So my head coach just came to me and said, "Hey, I'm just going to give you this book," and it was written by Dub Maddox. And then little do I know, 2 or 3 years later, we're sitting here on a podcast talking about anchoring and
another author.
Yep, just his story and what God's doing in his life. It was just a really great experience to talk to him.
All these coaches that write these books, I've had so many people say, you need to write a book. I'm like, oh, the Spirit's going to have to really tell me to write a book. So I respect you guys that have written books. Then we went to Diallo Burks. Again, I said it on the podcast. Image in my head is Diallo Burks catching touchdown pass against the Frankfurt Galaxy the year we won the world championship, and him giving that backhand spike. I said, what a spike. But Diallo is a sweet spirit. He's in our bi-monthly coaches group, which if you're looking for a bi-monthly coaches group, love to have you. And he's also, he's a head football coach at Warner University. We've done some things with his staff and team. And but Diallo, again, was a man of perseverance.
Yep.
Eastern Kentucky, NFL, out of the NFL, NFL Europe, back to the NFL, Arena Football League. He's made the tour, but he loves the Lord and just has a really sweet spirit. So, Diallo, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yep. Then we had Mitch Mayer, which, your first North Texas, your second or third coaching job. Your first quarterback, you coached him for 1 year and God brought him back just in conversations. And, he had broke a bunch of records at North Texas.
Till recently this year.
Yeah. And, but he's now a pastor and just going through his story and what God's been doing in his life over the last few years, battling through cancer.
Him, his wife, and his little girl.
Oh my!
All had cancer.
Yeah. And just his perseverance and faith and walking through all that. And then, getting to a place where he's been tired.
Yes.
And I think hopefully by now, I think he's going through his sabbatical or working through his time of rest. Just that's one of the things that, I think is important for all of us. Do we have that rest stop, that place that, we can just take a deep breath and spend it with Papa and let him, because he's the source. He can refill us. It's just, are we in that place where we gives ourselves the opportunity to allow him to do that? Well,
like we say in our ministry, right, we're a sports ministry network to coaches, athletes, and those in leadership.
Yeah.
Pastors, CEOs, head football coaches. These are people in the top chair. Where do they go when life blows up? I mean, can you imagine 3 individuals, your wife, your daughter, and yourself, major cancer issues?
Yeah.
That alone, and then everything else that's going on in life. So, yeah, we want to be able to reach out to those people that are working through pain in their life, whatever that pain looks like. And Mitch was a special person to coach, and really have a lot of respect for him and his story. So, Mitch, thanks for your story. Then we went to the baseball diamond. This came again from one of our guests recommending someone else, or actually, it was through my coaching opportunity at Albertville High School. Our head football coach knew some people that are tied to Kentucky.
Yep.
And we had Nick Mangione. And what a story, right? Yeah. Never been a head coach.
Yeah.
Until the day Kentucky hires him as the head baseball coach. They go on to win the Super Regional this past year, go to the World Series. I forget how far they went, but his story caught me off guard. Even Mom said, I love that baseball coach. He just had such a really soft spirit,
Yeah.
and had a real heart for the transformational style of coaching. And so I don't know what Nick spoke to you, but Nick, thanks for giving us time, and we'll be following Wildcat baseball.
Well, for me, if my son was playing baseball, that's the kind of staff or person I would want to be, my kid playing for, someone with that type of mindset and that heart. Next one is my buddy Jordan Lyerly.
Oh boy, Jordan Lyerly.
Yeah, he's
Bojangles.
He's been integral part of this whole journey, and just this whole Win Awakening journey and the conversations we've had behind the scenes, and just his conversations that has forced me to think, and it was awesome just to have the opportunity to talk about or to share his story and what God's doing in his life, and just his mission and his heart to share the gospel. And him and his wife who live in an apartment complex and share to the people over in Atlanta. So it has just been an honor for my buddy and to tell his story.
Yeah, it's been fun having Coach Jordan back at Fellowship Christian, but to see him talk about simple church and to talk about incarnational theology and just wanting to enter into people's lives and to be in the midst of where they live. And he was a real encouragement. I just love his life. He's always got life just beaming out of him, and he's on a heck of a journey himself spiritually. And so, Jordan, we encourage you to continue to just keep seeking Papa, because he's right there with you, seeking you out. Then we did something interesting. We did a family.
Yeah.
The Booty family. Back to 1990. I guess it was 3 or 4 when I was one of the coaches at Pitt. Went down to Louisiana to recruit Josh Booty. He and Peyton Manning, top quarterbacks. Foolish to think I had a chance, probably.
You had the third call to Peyton Manning.
been great friends with the Booties ever since, and that was a wow. I mean, Johnny Booty, the dad, the mom Sonia, but Johnny, we just had some great statements, revisioning the way we see things, and he was awesome. And then we talked to each kid and the grandchild. Right? We talked to Josh, Abram's son, General, who was at Oklahoma at the time, who's now at ULM, then JD, and then Jack.
Yep.
What'd you take away from the Booty family? I know we don't have enough time for everything.
Yeah, no, they were, it was just such each of them had their own story, but you just saw how their dad had impacted each one of them. And their dad just is I had some great conversations with him after that podcast. And, it was just a blessing to enter into each of their stories and get to hear what God's doing in their lives. I mean, because each of them have been fantastic athletes and accomplished amazing things. And, but it all starts with just their dad and mom,
Great family story.
Next up, we had, we recently just did Rasheed Gale, who was one of my high school coaches, who played at Boise State and got a chance in the NFL, played a little bit of defensive back. Just the impact of friends and coaches who just motivate you and spend time with you. You know what I mean? And the roles that they play was, to me, one of the things that I took away from his story. And just also he said, culture is, we are together. It is safe to fail, and a failure is the road to success is a statement that he said. Is just, you can't be afraid to fail, because that's just the next step to growing.
I think of Rasheed's big smile and the life he has. 10 kids. Those of you who are thinking of having 10 kids, talk to Rasheed. Thanks, Rasheed, for being on the podcast. Then we went into a world that we know nothing about, you and I.
Yeah.
The music world. Again, one of my board members, dear friend, Craig Snyder, knows Ron Block, recommended Ron Block. Ron said he'd do it. 14-time Grammy Award winner, bluegrass specialist, banjo expert.
and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that guy is so deep.
And we're coming back with him. He's another author, wrote Abiding Dependence. My wife and I just are on the last one, and we do a daily little devotional. Great book I'd recommend if you're looking for something as a couple, looking at how do we abide? How are we dependent? And we're coming back with him. He wants to do another one with us.
Yep. Then we had Rainey Childress, somebody who you've met around here. But he has a very interesting story. I encourage you to listen to that podcast. Just he spent time in prison, and just God's restoration, and just continual work on his heart, and just how he serves and loves people now. And it was just there was one statement though that really sticks with me even now. It says, it's not a matter of what someone says about you, it's a matter of who signs off on you. Yes. He was in the middle of being transferred from one prison to another, and he's like, well, why would they transfer me? And the guy said, it's not a matter of basically you, it's a matter of who signs off on you. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel, of what Jesus has done for us.
But I think a Rainey Childress story, I think of God's favor. Just boom, boom, boom. God showed his favor all through the process. Then we went down to Tallahassee, most recently, actually, and we talked to Kes McCorvey, one of our former players at the Rhine Fire, great player with Florida State, drafted high with the Detroit Lions. You talk about rich, right?
Yeah.
We're wondering if, some of these people would talk for an hour, and Kes just kept talking and talking. We spent 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Felt like nothing.
Been a big hit. Yeah. I mean, tons of people were viewing the thing. Statement he said that spoke to both of us, though. Bobby Bowden shared it with him, right? We all heard the story about, hey, the grass is greener over there. He turned it around and said, make yourself a green grass grower.
Yeah.
What a statement, right?
Yes,
wherever you are, be a green grass grower.
Yes, that's really wise. And then we had Toledo Tom, right? One of your old bosses, Coach Amstutz. And what a blessing that was. I mean, so much wisdom. He's, from when, he knew he wanted to be a coach, is just a conversation he had with his dad, watching just one young kid on a baseball team not be able to hit a ball, and eventually over a year's time learn how to hit a ball. And he said, and his dad pointed out, that's what a coach does. And it inspired him to become one of the great coaches of college football.
Numerous guys said this, but his stuck out to me when he said he held up that championship trophy after the bowl, or after the winning the MAC conference championship. And one of the reporters said, so what do you think about next year?
Yeah.
And he said, there was my 5 minutes of being a champion.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to help people walk through at Win Awakening, because your championship status goes like this. What do you do with the rest of your life? You're always trying to perform.
Right. It's got to be more than that 5 minutes. And just him as a recruiter, he was all about relationship and finding out about the person in front of him. And it was just a great time we got to spend with Coach.
And if you want to learn a little bit about fishing lures, he has some knowledge there. We'll be having a great fishing story coming up in 25. But Coach Stutz, we love you, and thanks for being on the podcast. Team Ferguson, one of my favorites. Coach Ferguson is a dear friend, recently just been let go. So he's working through that with his wonderful wife, Mary Beth. They were transparent. They've lived a life like a coach all over the place at every level. 5 children and a grandchild on the way. Had some tough things happen in their family. He and I talk weekly. He and I and another guy have a weekly call for the last 2 years. And I know this, Brian, you've blessed me. Love you dearly. And we just thank you and Mary Beth for sharing your hearts as Team Ferguson. And Papa's got you guys. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Team Jones, one of Dad's best friends, and then one of the, when my dad was the head coach at Liberty, me and a bunch of the coaches' sons would go out and play on the football field and run around the campus for hours. And there was just one summer that we spent together, and that sticks out in my life, one of the best summers of my life. And Coach Jones' son was there that summer, Chandler Jones, and we got to spend an hour just reliving, but also talking about memories and championships they've won and just some of the wisdom that both have experienced. But the thing that, stuck with me is just, you know, how, because it was one of our first ones we did, um, how it gets passed down from father to son as coaching and the passion to pour into people's lives and we're just thankful for all that you've meant to us and taking the time to share your story.
And they were very candid. They were one of our first teams that talked about, going through a divorce, both as the husband and as the son working through that, and dad not being there. And yet I always call him Championship Jones. He's now won 3 UFL championships in a row.
Yeah.
He's won a World Bowl championship in NFL Europe. All the guy does is win championships. That's my friend, Championship Jones. Mike, I love you. I love you. And thanks for being on our podcast. Then we had Team Malone, which was a really surprise because once again, we didn't know this person, but Johnny Booty said you need to talk to the Malones.
Yes.
What a story. Here's the Kevin Malone is the GM of the Dodgers.
Yep.
High career. He's great success story. And then boom, tragedy hits the family.
Yeah.
Their son, Sean, has some issues that he gets involved with, ends up dying.
Yeah.
And they see God bring him back to life. The mom's has a miraculous prayer.
Yeah.
And they just were very candid. Again, author wrote a book, which I highly recommend. He works now within sex trafficking, trying to save little children. Just got a great ministry,
Great
Kevin
heart.
Malone, and his son, Sean. So thank you guys for sharing your story so transparent. What a blessing to me in Austin.
And then we had Coach Gailey and his son. That was such a blessing. You played for Coach, I guess, back for the Broncos. Is that how you first met him?
Receiver coach my first year. My second year was the QB coach.
Yep. And to me, the word I wrote down is likeness. I wrote likeness, father like son, and just how just how they were just so so much.
They were genuine and humble.
They were genuine, and just how they were able to, or just the way they think and how they see people, and just how they care for the people around them, and they're very gifted. I mean, Coach Gailey's been an offensive coordinator for a bunch of different teams, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys and
Buffalo Bills.
Yep, and how his son just followed in his footsteps, and now coaching in high school and caring for people in that community, and and we're doing similar stuff, father like son.
Yeah, we've been blessed with a lot of these father-son combos, and that's part of what we wanted to do because it's me and you doing it.
Yeah.
But Chan is such a humble person and a great competitor, has had great success, and you could see it in Tate, just a really humble spirit. They got a great family. And so, Chan, thank you for being part of our podcast. Tate as well. Appreciate both you. Then we had Team McIntyre.
Yep.
We had 3 because we had Jay and Johnston. Both his boys are in coaching. Mike McIntyre, very successful coach all over. He's actually right now, once again, one of those guys that's going through a tough time of being let go. And his son, Jay, had worked with him. So I know they're trying to find something for Jay, which they will. But Mike's been at Colorado, a successful head coach. Was recently at FIU. And I keep saying success. Some people might say, what do you mean he got fired? Well, success isn't based on your win-loss record or if you got fired. Because I know Mike McIntyre and his boys and his son Johnson's now, I think, at Belhaven. They've touched many lives, and there's been lots of growth within those performances. And so, Mike, as I've shared with you through various texts over the last few weeks, Austin, I have you and your family in prayer, and just continue to encourage you to keep doing the things you're doing because you're making an impact, my friend.
And then we had Team Parson, two players, former players of yours who are both coaching together over in Georgia. And to me, it was just how they both spoke about their dad and the impact that they've had. They're both very tough individuals, and just how the bonding force of a father and how it unites their sons. And now they're coaching together and pouring into other people.
Yeah, those two are special to me. And, I think of the Biff Parsons story. I told it on our podcast. We're playing Hofstra in 2000. We're busing to Hofstra from Lynchburg, Virginia. I don't know, 10, 12-hour bus ride. Biff just gets the crap beat out of him. And he's laying on the aisle in the middle of the bus all the way home, just beat up. And what a just a great person. He and his brother Rhett and that whole family have had the chance to coach both those kids. So you're right. Those are just humble guys that are great coaches, great family men. And we thank the Parsons for being on air as well. And then we had Team Carr. Remember Roger and John Carr? Yep. John played a role in your life.
Yep. He helped me or connected me with a guy who gave me an opportunity over in Texas. And I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity.
And Roger Carr, a lot of young people don't know Roger Carr, but he's White Lightning, I think they called him. Great wide receiver, could really run, played with Burt Jones in the Baltimore Colts. And just once again, now a pastor, actually coached in the same Mississippi JUCO league that I did. So did his son, John. So we have all those connections. But just, again, I thought a father-son spirit of, I think of the story John told when the mom and dad said, don't be bringing any D's home. Don't be bringing any D's home from school.
Yeah.
So one day they look out their front window and they see John get off the bus and they see him throwing these pieces of paper down on the ground. And he comes in the house and they said, John, what are you throwing away? Oh, nothing. What do you mean? So Roger goes out and they get the paper and they see there's D's on it. He said, don't bring the D's home, Dad. Little kids are creative, very creative. So John, Roger, thanks for being on Awaken Kingdom Culture. And I saved our only daughter, father conversation for last.
Yes.
Philip and Miriam Prince.
Yeah.
And Philip Prince, the best way I can sum up him, Austin, Mom and I have had a relationship with him since our 10 years in Mississippi. Philadelphia, Mississippi, the Princes, they are just unbelievable people. Big heart, generous, lovers of people. Two things they're committed to: Jesus and basketball. Started a church called the Ark.
Yeah.
3-pointer. We challenged he and Miriam, who's the best 3-point shooter. We're going to give it to Miriam. I think she's at Louisiana Monroe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And doing well there. So Philip, Miriam, Val, that whole family, we appreciate you. And we just thank you for all that you've done for the Karchers, both in Mississippi and now here at Win Awakening.
Woo! That is that's a lot of people and a lot of stories, and obviously we couldn't highlight everything and every thing. That's why we have all these podcasts, and we ask that you listen to each and every story because each one is valuable. And we are just humbled and thankful for the time that you've provided and allowed us to step into your story, and we're just thankful for who you are and what God's doing in your life.
Austin, you said it well. What a blessing, and we are just grateful. That's the way to sum it up. We're grateful. As we close, I just thought of a few key topics that I took and we took over this year journey of Awaken Kingdom Culture. And I don't want to make light of it. I want to thank, because this is the podcast I want to talk about last, and we saved it to the end, is I want to thank my wife, Pauline. You all know that, being a husband in this profession and Austin's wife, Lauren, it's so easy to get lost, and it's tough. It's tough to stand by your husband in this profession. And we had the opportunity, Austin, to share Mom's story.
Yep.
You're the son. You want to give a little perspective on that one? Because it brought me to tears, as it always does.
Well, it was just, I got to put that one together and to plan for that one. And, the biggest thing that I wanted to convey to her is that I see you and I've seen what you've done and how you've poured into my life and sacrificially. And just,
we're raw here.
Yeah. Obviously I call you every day to talk about such. I don't do the same with my mom. But what she's done for me and who she is and the relationship we have is such a gift. And I couldn't be who I am or what I'm about without her and her story in our lives.
There's one thing about your mom since 2005 that has been the most drastic change. She's my miracle baby. is God's love comes through her every day. And she has challenged me without words to love people.
Yeah.
And has made a major impact in me. There's not a day that goes by that my bride, Pauline, doesn't touch my life for the better. So thank you, Paul, for sharing your story and for letting us be a piece of that journey that was very difficult to restoration. And we see you as your husband and as your son. Some of the other things we got out of the podcast, we saw the role of a home, right? Growing up in a home.
Yep.
It's important.
All have different ones.
It's important. We saw parents' approval and belief in you, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of that words matter, how we speak into our kids and those around us.
We saw how a coach has the power of influence, and the memories that are created from those influences that they have.
And we talked about how faith, everybody, different parts of where they are in their journey of faith, helps us navigate those highs and lows of this performance-based industry. We talk about coaching, but anything that you're trying to perform, it's faith that helps.
How do you want to be remembered is something we always we do in our little legacy piece, and just seeing people's hearts, and that's something that we all need to think about, because a lot of time we get distracted with where our focus is, and what really do we want to be remembered? What are things that are eternal?
No doubt. No doubt. And then we talked about, one story at a time. And that's this whole podcast, right? Awaken kingdom culture, one story at a time. Hearts and minds, right? We want to get into people's hearts and minds and the importance of that one story. So as we wrap it up for 24, Austin, 2024, this is number 50. I just want to say thank you to you for being on this journey with me. It's something that I treasure. I look forward to it every week. And we have some exciting guests, and we're going to be doing some different things in 25.
Yeah.
We're going to take the podcast on the move.
Yeah.
Today, here we are in our son-in-law's offices.
First shoulder to shoulder.
That's
podcast.
Our first time, but it looks good to me. And, we're going to have, like I said, various types of guests. We're going to have our first retreat called The Drive, which was very important in my life back in 2005. So we're going to be having that in March.
Yeah.
And we're excited about that. We have a big preparation meeting tomorrow.
You want to explain what The Drive is real quick?
Well, it's going to be an environment, a community where people can be known, where they can be transparent and vulnerable. We're going to have an opportunity to share their story. They'll get 1 hour to do that, and then we'll walk with them over a 6-month period, twice a month, 3 hours each time we're together. A couple all-day Saturday get-togethers, and there's two stories in the Bible that make me think about a way to describe the drive. The first is the story of Lazarus. You look at that story, and it's so easy for me, at least it was. I got caught up in the miracle of Jesus raising Lazarus from the grave, but I didn't catch on till many years later. The end is really the statement that changed my life, is when he calls him out. He says, "Come on out." And Lazarus comes out. What's he say to the people? Unwrap his grave clothes.
Right.
So he can go live.
Yeah.
Well, that to me is what the drive is. Unwrapping each other's grave clothes so we can be transparent, vulnerable, and go live in that freedom of victory.
Yeah.
And then the second one is drawing a blank here. The story of not Lazarus. We already said that one. But anyway, so the drive is going to be something that, I think will be a great opportunity for people to grow, and that'll kick off in March. And then we're going to, like I said, start doing some different things with our podcast. You've seen some of our YouTube shorts, but this will be an opportunity to put some things out on TikTok, some of these great statements from our guests already, and just to encourage people and lead them back to their podcast. So 2025, we're looking forward to it. On the move with Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds grow one story at a time.